Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello there, it's Gemma, and this is episode 276 of the new series of the Cognitive podcast. This one is entitled From My Sunny Corner, because I've had such a calm little week. And so I just have a little picture of Minerva. She is crouching by her cat bed where she does not rest. She likes to rest against the side with her head against it. So there she is behind one of my yarn bins. She is in her sunny corner, and pretty much this week I was too. As I record this, it is Monday, March 9th at 7:59 p.m., which means, yes, Minerva also feels I should be handing her treats, and yet, not really, I'm sitting here. Your comments are very welcome. Please feel free to comment on the blog at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com, or you can go to our group on Ravelry. And all of that, of course, leads me to extend my warm thanks to Caro Trike. It was really nice to hear from you. And I really would like you to continue spreading your positivity to the little ones. And please enjoy your hats. Caro Trike had her Melt the Ice hat removed from her possession and given to someone else. And she was very positive about it. And I also want to thank Turbo Gal, who really popped up a few times, which makes me very, very happy. We are still thinking of you, and I do still appreciate your activism on behalf of the Minnesotans. And yes, I wanted to point out, if people want to be active, one of the most effective ways is 5 calls a day. The link is in the show notes. This is a website that helps you get in touch with all your people in Congress. And you just call them. They will give you scripts. They will tell you what you can say. You can alter any script for what you want to say. But 5 calls a day, it's an incredibly useful thing to know. And yes, there are also apps for your phone that will do it with you. Also, Turbo Gal, anytime you want to go to the LA County Museum of Art, LACMA, with us, you just get on that plane and you come here and you let me know. I would love to hang out with you at a museum. Finally, Turbo Gal again, thank you for the steeking help. She says that she is enjoying my steek progress and, quote, I find the Tech Knitter blog to be full of useful tips. Here's what she has about steeking, and then she gave me a link. This is so perfect because I have reached that moment just about. I have maybe 3 rows left on the neckline, so I'm very interested in this. So thank you, Turbo Gal. Lots of really great contributions this week. As always, I want to thank all my listeners, my communities on Finch, on Reddit, on the ground in both the Santa Clarita and Antelope Valleys, and most especially in this listener group. You can see my 2 burbs from Finch. They are in the Serengeti together. Why they are in the Serengeti, only the app knows. But there they are in the Serengeti, wearing about as inappropriate clothing as a finch can wear. But I am still happily using the Finch app. I think I'm at about day 345 or something. Moving right along. The Cognitive Fiber Retreat 12. All the information. There is a link in the show notes, and you can keep up with us on that. Remember, the date is now November 7th, 2026, so mark your calendars. In the meantime, the information for registration is right there in the show notes. So, what's on my hooks and needles? Well, you'll be happy to know I finished my socks. These are the Dizzy Laser socks. They are two different colors. The brown is from Dizzy Blondes. The gold is from Laser Sheep. I love them both. And this time I wanted to try some experiments. So the first pair of socks, I'm using the brown from Dizzy Blonde to be the highlights on the sock. That is the ribbing at the top, the heel, and the toe. On the second pair, I will reverse that and put the Laser Sheep gold yarn in those places. Now, this will leave me with a lot of leftover yarn, just trust me. So I'm going to take those two colors again and hopefully do striping and make a third pair of socks. And that pair is really to experiment with, should I be looking at every 2 skeins of yarn as representing 3 pairs of socks? Now, if I do the striping and I do not have enough, and that is very possible, I will use up all I can of these 2 yarns. I will go right to the end of both skeins, right down into the foot. And further down the foot, I will use up scrap yarns, probably from what I still have left over from other balls of yarn, because I think this is just a great way to go through my sock yarn collection while using up scraps and not creating more. So these became train socks. I really started them and immediately regretted it, thinking I had all these other sweaters and projects I'm working on. No. I have really, really been grateful to have these guys around for my popcorn knitting when I needed it. What else are you working on, Gemma? Remember the Coral Strange Brew? Yeah. Interesting thing happened on the body. I was working, from the bottom up, and I realized suddenly there was a hole in it. In the stitch work about 14 inches up, and I had 18 inches finished. And then I realized what had happened was I'd accidentally split a stitch. I don't know what I was thinking of. There was no reason for it. Just in the middle of a ball of yarn, I split a stitch on one row. And that introduced a new stitch on every row above it and made a hole in the fabric where I split the stitch. So I put up with that for quite a few rows. I got up to like 22 rows past it, thinking this isn't bad, and when I block it, it'll come out. And I noticed finally that I was stitching across it in a normal tension again, so I just had this big kind of zipper for a few rows, and I hated it. And I remembered the immortal words of our own Gigi Knitmore, if you don't like it now, you're not going to like it when it's finished. So I did the brave thing. I took a pair of 7 needles, because that's what I was knitting on, and I went back quite well below that zipper start. I went back to below the hole, and I worked my way around to the beginning of that row. And then I went through with the needle. This was a 40-inch circular 7, and I used that for my sweater bodies. And I went in through and I picked up every other thread. I don't know what to call it. In other words, I picked up every stitch. And when you pick up a stitch, of course, you run your needle under one leg of the 2 legs of each stitch. So there I was going under, over, working my way around the legs of all the stitches. I think in this one it's something like 180, something like that. I worked all the way around. And then when I had that needle run through that entire row of stitches, I went up to the top, pulled out the needles up there, and simply ripped it out down to those needles. Oh, if only it had come out evenly. It didn't. Somehow I had managed to go down 2 rows. And the fix is not hard. Strange but true. I suddenly realized I had these extra live stitches sticking out above the cable. And you know what happens there when you do that? Is you have the other part of the stitch as a straight line of yarn behind it. So this is hard to describe, but the fix was actually very obvious and very easy. And I'm now back up to 17 out of those 18 inches, and I don't have a big ugly zipper. I am reminded of the words of the immortal Barbara Walker, who died recently at a very advanced age. She wrote in a letter to Elizabeth Zimmerman many moons ago, I'm not going to quote this exactly, but she said, could you please remind your readers, that is the knitters who read Zimmerman's articles, that they are knitting with a sheep. They're not supposed to be the sheep. That you can't just give up a whole sweater for a mistake like this. And pushing through and hoping the blocking works. You may get lucky or you may not. If you don't, you're going to hate the sweater. So this was a very nice fix, and I'm very, very pleased with it. Now, at the moment where you change from one row to the next, which I have a stitch marker in, the beginning of the row, as it were, there was a little irregularity, and I thought, oh no. And I knitted my way around and I looked at it. And then I looked at it and realized, no, the stitches are a bit distorted because of the repairs I was making, but they are all there, both legs, and they look right. And sure enough, 3 inches later, it just all soothed its way out and everything is fixed. I'm very pleased with myself. The Coral Strange Brew has been rescued. I'm an inch away from getting to the place where I can join the arms and the body together and begin working on the yoke, which is great because it's March. This is basically a Halloween sweater. Yeah. You know, we have short winters here. What can I say? But I'm really happy to be having this one so close to the finish line. Meanwhile, Vestuary, I really didn't do anything on it. I need to sit down and pay attention to it now because I'm going back and forth to finish. I think I'm doing the back right now, and then I'm going back and forth to finish the front. I think they're going to be the same, which should give me a crew neck, and that's okay with me. I realize that I have learned an enormous amount from this. And yes, I am going to go to those bits of wisdom from Turbo Gal's source and go and see what I can learn there about steeking. But boy, has this experiment been worth its weight in gold. I am actually looking forward to my next vest with steeking, and I have already learned some of the changes I will be doing on it. This is the most interesting thing in knitting, along with the doodle knits motifs that I've done in a long time, and I think it's really revitalized my knitting. If you're afraid of steeking, I don't know what to say to you. I'm not, and I never have been. Because I'm a seamstress, and I've been a seamstress for a long time, for 20 years before I became a knitter. So to me, steeking is just another way of working with a fabric that unravels once you cut it. And so you have to secure the raveling edges. And that is no different whether you're sewing with a cotton fabric or you're sewing with a knitted fabric. You just have to tamp everything down. So the question for me has always been, well, how do you adjust a pattern to it? And that's the thing I'm still working on. But I still have to find, I think, a better vest pattern that will be a little more amenable to steeking than what I'm using. And that is nothing against the pattern I'm using. Ann Budd's vest has been a classic for years, and it has seen me through 9 vests or something. It didn't work on this vest. I just didn't get the right tension. After 9 of her vests, this was really on me. Please do not blame Ann Budd. The Knitter's Handy Book of Patterns is one of the few books I would say everybody needs to own a copy. It's such a classic, and the patterns are great. They are knitted in pieces, and that is a form of knitting education you should check into if you knit long enough. Okay, in other words, this isn't something that should be a mystery. Do a top-down seamless sweater, sure, but you should also investigate sweaters with seams. There's a lot to learn there. So, Vestuary, I'm not there yet. I thought I might get to it last Saturday, but I got sucked up in other things. What'd you get sucked up into, Gemma? The Prawn Agnes. I have now knitted 5 of the 6 skeins of the original prawn. I have knitted the whole body. I have done the fade into the second color. I go back and forth on liking it, but I like it enough to keep going. I am on sleeve number 1. It is coming out a little tight, the whole sweater thing, and it's because of the way I'm doing the fade. It's a long story. It means that the yarn in the back could have been looser. I'm not worried. I've tried it on a few times. It's gradually stretching very nicely. I think with blocking and washing, it should be just fine. I'm not used to really fitting my sweaters this much. It's going to be really nicely fitted. I think it's going to look like it was poured over me. In fact, I'm enjoying it. I have to say that. It's just two beautiful colorways. So I'm working my way down the first arm. It's the left arm in the picture, but it doesn't matter because the front and the back are the same on this one. I'm really enjoying this. It's a very fast knit. The only thing that's slowing it down is the color change because I'm doing it as sort of a fade instead of doing stripes or anything like that. I don't want stripes on this. And it's very nice. So hopefully the Prawn Agnes, which is a stay-at-home project, I don't want to take it on the train because it's so bulky. Hopefully that'll be done in the next week or two. But it is really quite delightful. And I almost started a new one this weekend. Then I smacked myself up the head and said, the weather is getting warm. No quilting, no spinning. So I want to get on to a strategy. I started with one strategy and ended with another. What I wanted to give you was the use of the happiness chemicals. And I gave you a really nice graphic there, and you can click on it and download it and have a look at it. Now, the 4 chemicals for brain happiness are dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins, which there's a few more there, but they're one category, okay? And this graphic I gave you breaks them down into their uses, and it's pretty good. I mean, the body is not quite as tidy as this graphic is, but it is worth looking at because it's the things you do to produce these happiness chemicals. I care because dopamine is the base chemical. Dopamine is the chemical that humans get as a reward for doing good things. It's nothing more than that. Where that matters to me as a clinician is people get dopamine when they have a problem and more dopamine when they solve a problem. And that is huge in the way we behave. Yes, people become anxious because having problems and being anxious gives dopamine. Unfortunately, as I'm always telling patients, it kills the body because you release other chemicals that harm you, and I'm not going to go there today. Oxytocin is a big one. That is, they call it the love chemical, I believe. And the thing about oxytocin, it's what humans get when they give love to other humans. If you're a mother and you've ever breastfed, baby, you know all about this. Because breastfeeding releases a flood of oxytocin. Your body actively rewards a mother for breastfeeding her baby. And in the beginning, it's so powerful, it usually knocks the mother to sleep, which is good. Because in the early days after childbirth, the mother needs a lot of sleep. She isn't getting much. So what happens? The baby nurses, the baby gets oxytocin from the contact. The mother gets oxytocin from the contact. They both fall asleep together. Those of you who have done this will remember with me those happy days. There is nothing like an oxytocin nap. Meanwhile, there's serotonin. Serotonin is implicated in suicide, that it seems to be the absolute draining of serotonin that is either produced by suicide or causes suicide. Kind of hard to know because we can't see it in the brain of a living person. So this is a hard one. We're working on theory here. Serotonin comes from mindfulness types of behaviors, deep breathing, meditating, running thoughtfully, walking meditation, that sort of thing. Serotonin, in a sense, takes a certain amount of willful self-control. A human has to pull themselves together, calm and regulate themselves to start serotonin pumping. And I think that's a very important thing because it explains why that's failing in severe chemical depression. And then there's endorphins. Endorphins are sort of this blast you get from sheer pleasure. So if you're laughing or celebrating or happy and smiling and you're doing good things, you get the endorphin hit. So those are your happiness chemicals that play into the brain, and there's a list of how to produce them. But I want to go to one more thing that happened in therapy today, and I just loved it. Where I had this very brilliant patient, and she was in a negotiation, very high level, very big deal. And the other person attacked her personally. And this patient and I had been working on fast skills. And as we were talking about what to do when she was attacked, I suddenly got this wonderful insight. And I realized that I should say this because this is so important to me especially. She and I got to talking about how when we get attacked in these discussions or negotiations, you feel as though there's like a wild animal ripping at your insides, bringing up all your painful memories. And we suddenly developed this metaphor of the lion on the leash. And I just thought, wow, this is really good and really important. And what we came up with was a person who is sensitive to personal attacks. What happens when someone else attacks you in a discussion is you begin to get a sense that something's going horribly wrong. And the problem is sensitive people will often break down at that point. They may start to cry or shake. And it's common in our culture to say, oh, that triggered me. And maybe it did. I'm not denying that. But I think it didn't trigger you. I think what's triggering you instead is you are ignoring a warning from your body that something's going wrong in the discussion. And you start to have a physical, emotional reaction to it, really in your body. You start feeling bad. And I love this patient. We started talking about this as the lion on the leash. That your sensitivity is there to protect and to warn you. And it helps you to protect yourself. And so it's like you've got this lion inside you that's trying to defend you. And you have to not stifle the lion. At the same time, you can't let the lion loose because that lion will just shred you, shred everybody, and make a shambles of whatever you're trying to achieve. So instead, your inner sensitivity can be understood as this very powerful animal that you've got on a leash. It's yours to control. If you don't control it, you're going to get attacked by it. You're going to get shredded. But it's interesting because you're lying on a leash. If someone is harming you or coming after you, you will begin to get physically uncomfortable. That's your lion roaring, saying, hey, pay attention. Something's going wrong. You need to learn to listen to that lion. And it's on a leash, so you're in charge. So you can take your lion and you can use it to help you. You can walk away from the problem, calm yourself down, and then consult with the lion what's the best way to manage this. If you don't consult with your lion, if you don't respect it and try to tame it, the problem you get is the lion on the leash starts attacking you. And that's where you see people doing things like falling apart and saying, oh, I'm triggered, I can't handle this, blah, blah, blah. Okay, maybe you can't because you haven't learned to manage your lion. But the question we both kept coming back to in this discussion is, how long do you want to go on saying, I can't handle this, I am helpless, I am the victim? How long do you want to do that? Is it working? Are you getting anything you want out of it? When do you want to turn around and trust that lion you've got on a leash, your sensitivity that is warning you that something is going wrong? And when you begin to trust that lion, you can work with the lion. The lion is going to drag you away from danger, and you can let it. You can take a break. You can work out a plan and rehearse it. You can calm your painful memories and your high emotions. And at the end of the day, when you do that, when you walk away from some sort of conflict and you calm yourself and your lion down, now you can access your lion as an ally. You can use it to help you return to the problem in a more productive way that gives you the power, like your lion, to handle it without falling apart. The question becomes, how long will you ignore your lion on a leash when it's roaring to you and telling you something's going wrong? And how long will you continue to allow the lion to rip into you because it's frustrated and you start talking about how you can't handle this, you're helpless because you're getting shredded by your own lion? When will you stop and say, I do not have to be a victim of my own emotions, my own internal lion. I've got that lion on a leash. I can take it for a walk. I can use it to help me recover. And yes, when I go back to fix the problem, the lion can be on my side and give me power to fix the problem. So I guess that led me to please learn to listen to your lion on the leash. My patient is not a listener, but if she was, I would thank her for this. It's one of the most valuable insights I think I've ever arrived at with a patient in a session. And it was just, pardon the expression, fierce. So I would say today the strategy is listen to that lion that we all have on a leash. And in my case, I would call that my emotional sensitivity. And I do have to admit, when I was in my 40s, I began to come to grips with it and realize that it was not the weakness I thought it was. In fact, it was an enormous source of strength for me as a clinician. But in my private life, I have to be careful not to let the lion run loose. That lion is for my stronger negotiations, shall we say, as a professional. At home, my job is to have a calm lion. So you have to manage it. It is a powerful creature, and you can only use it in the proper circumstances. Having said all that, not much this week. I'm looking at donating platelets. How this got into my exercise segment, I can't tell you. I guess because last week in I donated blood instead of doing a race. I'm getting very interested in donating platelets. Cancer patients, when they get chemo, they need platelets, and your platelets have to be used within 5 days. It's a major donation. To give platelets, it takes about an hour of paperwork and prep time, so you can do a lot of that on the Red Cross blood donor app before you go. The actual platelet donation takes about 2 hours. I say that because some of us who are older, that's a bit of a challenge, not to use a restroom for 2 hours. But I really want to try this, so I'm looking at that. I'll let you know if I do it. I cannot donate blood again till April 26th, and I will be donating blood again on April 26th, I hope. Meanwhile, you can see my schedule of races. In the Fluffy Books, I finished We'll Prescribe You a Cat. I really like that book. In fact, really, I've got the download of its sequel, We'll Prescribe You Another Cat. We'll Prescribe You a Cat is very quirky, and I didn't like it at first, and I do like it now, because I'm over my fear that everybody will run out and buy themselves a cat or get themselves a cat after they read this book. The book is very, very smart about the disposal of the cats at the end of it. And you begin to realize there's something just a little weird going on at the Kokoro Clinic for the Soul. And it's really interesting. I don't always see the connection between the behavior of the cat and the person who's got the cat. I think it's very cultural, and it's still really, really fun stuff. I am currently listening to The Ballad of Small Hope and Pennyroyal by Jodi Taylor, and I love it. But this is a spin-off from her series, The Chronicles of St. Mary's. And you really have to catch up on St. Mary's to know what parts of this book are about. This is really an insider's book, but it is written with wit and sass and good plot and intelligence by Jodi Taylor, who has never let me down. So I do recommend The Ballad of Small Hope and Pennyroyal, but you're going to have to wade through the St. Mary's series first. Let me warn you, they will break your heart sometimes. But they're very, very funny and smart. They're books for people who know some history and some literature. Otherwise, you're going to be struggling a bit. When I say history, let me clarify. A lot of Western European history, heavy emphasis on British history, but don't kid yourself, they go all over the world for their history. So it's a really interesting series. I was reading a book called The House Witch. I was listening to it at night, and I dumped it. I did not like it. It is not a total loser. The author is a one-word name, and I'm not going to bother. I'll put the link in the show notes. I didn't like it, and I'll tell you why. There's a lot of brains in it. But it's a Mary Sue. It's a really obvious Mary Sue. It's too obvious. And one of the ways you know a Mary Sue, strangely, is the writing style. That the writing style is heavier on plot than on description, and you don't have atmosphere. You don't have a lot of development of how things look, how things feel. It's a lot of verbs. The verbs are usually fairly flat. He said this and she said that, and he did this and she did that. That's The House Witch. There is some good plot in there. There are some very good ideas. This author has gotten a lot of sequels out of it. But the style just turned me off so badly. So that's The House Witch. No. And then I started reading the Bingley Codex, which is another Pride and Prejudice continuation, this time about Mary Bennet, the middle sister, and she's a witch. She's not exactly. And what I really like is Mary Bennet as a subject of the sequels. She doesn't get a lot of attention. The sequels I've read with her have been pretty good. But this is the best of the bunch because it simply allows for her growth in a really natural way after her sisters Lydia, Lizzie, and Jane have married. It goes against some of what we know that Jane Austen actually wanted to have happen. Jane Austen saw Mary as kind of hopeless, Mary Bennet, and she instead marries her off to some local tradesman, I believe, and says she's happy being the queen of her little village. But meanwhile, the second youngest sister, Mary is the middle sister, and then there's Kitty. Kitty, in Jane Austen's mind, was taken in hand by Lizzie and Jane with their wealthy husbands, and is married very respectably off to minor, I can't remember if he's minor gentry or a parson, local minister. But Kitty gets the kind of low-level marriage and servants, whereas Mary is kind of the queen of the village. So Jane Austen didn't like Mary, and it's really obvious why she doesn't, that Mary represents a type of prig, of the girl who's going to make up for her lack of talent and beauty with accomplishments, and she overdoes it and gets prissy and proud. So Mary Bennet in Jane Austen's mind ain't going nowhere. But a lot of writers rescue her, and I really like this version of it. I think this shows Mary taken in hand, in this case by Jane Bennet Bingley. And it basically shows that if you put her in a more peaceful environment without the shrewish mother and the critical sister, she could be okay. And then there's the delight of the magical side, which is not driven into the ground as these stories so often are. Minerva joins us. Something I really like. Minerva has just jumped in my lap. I really like that. But this weekend was the Los Angeles Marathon, and a friend of my son's ran it. And what I enjoyed, the technology... Are you finished? She's rubbing her face against the recorder. The technology has really improved. Now, if this gets muffled, it's because my hand's somewhat over the recorder trying to protect it from being knocked off the arm of the chair by her swishing tail. She's jealous because my son just came in. And that means she has to run to me and jump in my lap so he doesn't claim me in some way. All right. Hello, darling. You have to let me record. At any rate, so our friend was running the marathon. And it occurred to me, a few minutes into her run, I could be tracking her. And so I cut in with the tracking just after she had finished the first 10K of slightly over 40. She was doing great. She had a great race. It has to be said. And it was so much fun. When you use the tracking app, you just need to know their name. I knew part of her name, and I got close enough to guess the rest. And it will give you the bib number. And it will show you a graphic of your candidate on the course. And it will show you their times every 5K. It will show you their average pace. It will show you how far they've gone and how much they have left. This was the coolest thing ever. Now, my true love and I ran it in March of 2003. I'm looking at my picture up on my wall, even as I say this. I have to tell you, that marathon, it was LA Marathon 18. It's one of the proudest things I've ever done because it's like a PhD to me. That it's a kind of unquestionable, you are really an athlete moment. That this is a hard thing to do. Something like 1% of the population ever does a marathon. Now, they're really dumb to do. I have to tell you, they're really hard on you. I don't think you have to do one to win any kind of prize or be valuable or anything. At the same time, I've always been a runner. Every runner is going to somehow consider being a marathoner. It's going to go through your head. You just have to get used to it. The question you get the most often as a marathoner is, how did you learn to do it? I followed programs. I followed a program to get me to a 5K, then a program to get me to a 10K, then a program to get me to a half, then a program to get me to a full. The other question you get asked is, how did you know you could run a marathon? The answer is, I learned to run 1 mile. Because a marathon, it's just 26.2 of those babies. And the idea is you're going to learn the vast majority of the skills in that first mile. The rest of the skills you'll probably learn if you learn to run a 5K race. Now, there's only one exception to that. When you actually run the marathon itself, you don't know what it's going to be like because it's very demanding. So to really get comfortable running a marathon, you have to run one. And you will learn an enormous amount in your first marathon about this skill. Whether you run a second one or not, up to you. I ran 3 of them. I ran them in March, April, and May of 2003. Because my husband and I dared each other to run 1 marathon a month for 3 months so we could prove we were real marathoners. I actually injured the tendon on the outside of my left thigh in the 3rd one just from overuse. And it's been numb ever since for 23 years, no regrets. But it made me realize that I'm not built to run marathons. However, I am glad I did it, and that is a very perverse thought because it's not good for you. But marathon tracking, it was utterly cool. We watched her cross the line as my beloved was driving me down to the train station on Sunday. And it was very, very hot, just like the marathon I ran. They told us ours was going to be cool in the 70s, and it ended in the 90s. So my heart goes out to all of them. But our friend ran it in a whipping 5 hours, which meant she came in before the temperature hit 80. And that's about as good as it gets. So something I really like, the ability to track marathons. That technology is cool. It's a lot of fun to watch your friend do it. But the other thing I really like is the return of my segment called Green Fingers this week. That I decided to go out and start my project of weeding again because the spring rains have now passed pretty much. And I had some peppermint struggling under a lot of weeds. I also wondered what had happened to my creeping thyme because it was doing okay at the end of last summer. It wasn't doing great, but it was hanging on well enough to make me think it might survive and become a fixture like the peppermint has. I would love to have creeping thyme on this bed in the front yard. It's a really good thing to have. The problem is it doesn't do well in bright sunlight. Well, anyway, I went out a few days ago and I started my Green Fingers again, which is basically weed for, in this case, 10 minutes a day. Now, I missed a day on the weekend, I think. I don't really care. Because what blew my mind last year, I was weeding 15 minutes a day, but I'm having a sore back from all the train riding, to be brutally honest. So I've been weeding 10 minutes a day. You would be astonished how far that gets you. So in the show notes, you will see the pictures. First thing I got to was the peppermint. And the peppermint, I love that stuff. It is so determined to live. The peppermint was deeply overrun by weeds, more than I've ever seen before, because we had so much rain and the weeds just thrived this year. So I pull out all these weeds and I find the peppermint is growing under them because it can't grow through them because they are so dense. It was sending out long, and I mean 2 feet long, risers under the weeds to the sidewalks with leaves. The leaves would sprout when it got past the end of the weeds onto the sidewalk. I couldn't bear to tear those out. So you can see this weird, big, irregular patch of peppermint in the third picture in the Something I Really Like segment. And above it, you will see, it's the second picture in the Something I Really Like segment. Above it, you will see today's surprise. I was weeding, and I suddenly realized between my fingers, I was looking at creeping thyme. It's very recognizable. Very, very teeny tiny leaves, very, very even, and it carpets. Now the thing is, I thought the creeping thyme would simply burn out, and the weeds would choke it. Nope. The creeping thyme, like the peppermint, had its own strategy. Because of the weeds, the creeping thyme was in the shade of the weeds. So the weeds were on the top enjoying the bright sunshine, and the creeping thyme was going like gangbusters under it. So you can see there a big patch of creeping thyme. It's actually 2 patches that grew together under the shelter of the weeds. I hope I have not hurt it by putting it in direct sunlight. We shall see. It's not that intense yet. But anyway, I had a great time watering the peppermint patch and the creeping thyme patch. And then you can see a look of the rest of my weed bed going down the front of the house. And you can see the pile of weeds on the concrete. I have to get rid of those babies, but right now I'm not working on that. They can just sit there and dry out in the hot sun on the concrete. Right now I'm just working on 10 minutes a day to get down that patch. Okay. Meanwhile, you can see all the links, including my bundle of ice resistance patterns so far on Ravelry, places you can donate to support those impacted by ice, including the Immigrant Law Center of Minnesota, and also the link to Crafters Helping Minnesota, which has all sorts of other great links. Project Back episodes on Proton. We are carrying episodes 201 to 250 of this new series of Cognitive. Next month, I'm thinking I will probably just compress episodes 251 to 275 because I just like to have them compressed. And so I'll probably do that and mount them as the back episodes. You already can get them. They're probably still live over on Libsyn, but still. Put a lid on it. The tea tastings, no. I haven't really been doing anything new there. What I've been doing instead is enjoying tea with bread and butter because, yes, this past Saturday, I decided to bake more of the low-carb keto breads. Now, I did exactly what I did last week, actually 10 days ago now. I made 2 loaves at the same time because I made the quick bread and I made the pumpkin quick bread. These are the same basic recipe, but the pumpkin quick bread has a little more sweetener, has pumpkin in it, and some spices. Ooh la la. Very nice stuff. I recommend cream cheese on the quick pumpkin bread. But I thought I would give you a recipe today. And the reason I did is everything that's unusual in this recipe you can get from Thrive Market. I have the app for it, which I love, but you can also go to their website, which I'm sure is thrivemarket.com. And you can get anything you don't have. To my surprise, I had all of these things, which weirded me out. I even had the golden milled flax seed. The thing I didn't have was in the pumpkin quick bread, and it was stevia glycerite. But everything else, to my surprise, was in my pantry, but I had not used a lot of them. Some of them I bought as one-offs in recipes and promptly forgot about. The knock, knock, knock was my son, which he was helpfully checking to make sure the dogs have been fed. It's the beautiful little things about life, you know? Okay, so there's nothing really that strange here. But if you want to try this cookbook, and I do recommend it if you want a low-carb bread, a few things to know. First, look at that list of ingredients, because if you're going to try this cookbook, that list is going to give you the kind of unusual things you're going to run into in the cookbook. Most of them are in that list of ingredients. Second, they're not kidding. This is quick. Both the pumpkin quick bread and this quick bread. Really all you do is assemble all these ingredients. After that, it gets easy. You just mix all the dry ingredients in one bowl, mix all the wet ingredients in another bowl, and then pour one into the other. I don't care which way you do it. Mix them pretty thoroughly and pour them into a baking parchment lined bread pan, a loaf pan. Do not skip the baking parchment. You will regret it if you do. The baking parchment changes everything. The bread pops right out. It is already wrapped. It is easier to store. I just keep it right in the parchment. The pumpkin bread is somewhat oily and it leaks through the parchment. So I do tend to put a plate under it, or I do tend to put it in a Ziploc bag, which it won't last too many days so it doesn't get moldy, believe me. But if you want to see the kinds of ingredients you need, right there. Now, you may ask yourself, what about that apple cider vinegar going in with the heavy cream? Doesn't matter. It will not make things go sour. What is the apple cider vinegar doing? The authors explain most breads for keto taste very eggy. The apple cider vinegar cuts that flavor. So that seems great to me. It's not a lot. It's very easy to do. The pumpkin quick bread I'll try to give you next time. Very, very easy to do. There's nothing hard about these recipes. I really like this cookbook, and I highly recommend it. I do want to warn you, if you're not eating keto and you get this book because you want to go low carb, that's great. I have not tried some of the breads that come closer to imitating standard loaves of wheat-based bread. So I can't speak to that. I do want to warn you that keto bread often does not taste normal to people who aren't used to it. I went without bread for literally years and then happened on keto bread. There's a lot of different variations. The egginess may bother you. It's also got a more dense flavor. It comes closer to a rye bread or a brown loaf, but it is not the same. It is its own unique flavor. However, I happen to have sardines on toast tonight for dinner on this bread, and it was fabulous. I buttered the loaf. I didn't need to. It's certainly moist enough, and I deeply enjoyed it. And yes, you can slice it as thin as you want and use it in place of a more typical wheat bread. So there's the cookbook again with its link in the show notes. In the blather. Well, I called Jasmine Knitmore to check in, and it is such a joy to talk to her. And, you know, if you consider yourself on that level with her, please do. Please give her a call. Gigi Knitmore is not doing well. And it's a kind of gentle decline. And where it goes from here, I don't know if I really feel like this is all my thing to say, but I do want to give you fair warning. And Jasmine did say, when I talked to her, a couple weeks ago, yeah, you can say she's in decline. And I think that's the best way to put it. After that, we don't know more than that. And all I can tell you, I don't talk about this part of my past that much, but I did take care of a dying parent when I was 22. And I don't know, by the way, if Gigi is dying or not, but decline is where I would put it at this point. According to Jasmine, I believe her. But having really done this thing myself, I really would like to express my unqualified admiration for Jasmine and for Andrew and their kids. They are maintaining their wonderful lives, their very devoted family life, and they are dealing with one of the hardest things a family can manage. And all I can say is Jasmine has risen to the challenge, as we probably all knew she would, but this doesn't change the heroism the courage and the devotion that she expresses every day and that are needed in such drastic supply at a time like this. And I just want to express my unqualified admiration for her and always for our Gigi, always. Let me take a minute here. That leads me to another strategy, which is very simply, there is a great privilege in podcasting and in being able to express love and admiration to the people who inspire. Meanwhile, on Saturday, I just took a day off. Now, I didn't really, because I'm not capable of that. I would have to say, I decided that my back was hurting from getting jolted on the train because I've doubled my train rides. I used to drive for half an hour down to one station and take the train in from there to LA for about an hour. I start taking it in from my more local station. That adds an hour, and it's hard on my back. So I just said, okay, let's take a sit-still day on Saturday. Well, I'm not capable of that, you know that. So what I did on Friday to get myself through the day, because I was so tired, I actually gathered all the ingredients that I could on my kitchen counter, including the bread pans and the parchment, to make my loaves of bread. And it just did so much for me. Just walking around all day, every time I passed through the kitchen between patients, I'd run out to do laundry or whatever, and I'd see everything on the counter. And that really motivated me. So, on Saturday morning, I got up and got going right away. And I cleaned one of the Roombas and set it loose on the bathroom floor, which I later mopped, sponged really. And I did Project Touch Up, which right now is inspired by the Finch app, but I'm going around the house working on walls and doors and doorknobs and just and light switches, cleaning off the grit that accumulates. Everything's white in our house, so this is a lot of work. But anyway, I did, a good 10 or 15 minutes of Project Touch Up there. And I did the loaves of bread, and I did laundry, and I did the green fingers for the day, the weeding. And I edited episode 275, which I was horrendously late on. And I yarn tossed in my stash. I went through really assessing where I was on the sweaters I'm working on, including vestuary, and trying to get everything a little more organized. So there's no great pictures in the show notes from Saturday because there was really not a lot to photograph, except I guess I did photograph the green fingers materials that I've already talked about. Sunday, I realized with horror that the beloved son's 20th birthday is coming up very soon. And I had to go get his presents. It was easiest for me to do it because we knew what we wanted, but it was probably easiest found in Glendale or not. So I decided Sunday to take a late train after I talked to a good friend on the phone. This is Nancy, who you may have heard of, my former lawyer friend. Anyway, I jumped on the train. I went down to Glendale and then realized the stars were not aligned for me to come home. I wanted to take the train all the way back to our local station, which is every other train on Sundays. You can't take every train. Some of the trains just stop at the old station closer in where I used to leave from. So I realized, okay, the stars were off for me to get my kids' other present. So instead, I had this really interesting experience where I took the train from Glendale up to Santa Clarita, and I got off and I caught a bus. Really easy to do. The buses out of that train station are literally parked in front of where the train stops. Could not be easier. I love the LA Metro Transit system. It is really outstanding. It doesn't get nearly the credit it deserves. Anyway, I hopped on this bus, and it took me right down to the place I needed to be, and I found what I wanted. I also got a chance to jump into Barnes & Noble and used a restroom and shopped a little bit. Didn't buy anything for myself. And then I caught the train back to my place, and the beloved picked me up, and I was back in plenty of time for a peaceful Sunday evening with BLT sandwiches with my boys. It was just lovely. In the meantime, sad but true, you can find the links to all the things we need to help ourselves in the current political environment, including the lifelines for LGBTQIA plus people from the Trevor Project and the Canadian government. You can find the links and information to avoid ICE and its various machinations. And you can see the community resources of books and other resources that I use to knit, crochet, and craft. Remember them? Meanwhile, you can see my list of upcoming races, which now starts with the Sugar Daddy 5K on June 20th. I need to get out there and start, but it's still doing the windstorms outside. And of course, CFR 12 on November 7th, 2026. Minerva gets the last word. I was very exhausted last week. Minerva was really confused by how tired I was because I had a lot of patients, and I have another week like that happening right now, I must say. So Minerva was worried, so she spent the whole week in my lap. I could not talk to a patient without 20 pounds of Minerva jumping on my lap. So there is a picture of her on my lap. I honestly think that she believed I must be sick or injured because I wasn't getting out of the chair and I was just so tired. I really don't know why. So Minerva's last word is, you must be sick if you sit still. So I will lie on you. I will fix you. Yes, it's true. I was prescribed a cat. And she said, I will lie on you all day and every day. This is because Minerva understands, as all cats do, that they help other cats when they are sick. Cats actually crawl on other sick cats and purr to help them because the purring actually helps to heal broken bones. I'm not making that up. So cats instinctively huddle on someone who they think is sick or in trouble, and they will purr when they're really worried. So I had Minerva doing this because Minerva understands that she and I are two parts of a very important community in our home. And when Minerva acts to help the community, she is acting to help herself and to preserve all of those sunny corners that we have been nesting in this week in our little communal home. Having said that, everybody stay safe, take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.